have analysts and observers here with us. We'll be joined right now by Allwell Okpi. He is from FactcheckAfrica. Oh, well, thank you very much for joining us again this morning. We were together yesterday. Well, you joined us yesterday and we spoke about some of the information that were fact-checked by your organization yesterday, some of them quite misleading. I'm hoping that you can remind us of some of those from yesterday and if there are any new ones that might have made rounds that need to be checked right now.
Okay, yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, Allwell from Africa Check. This lecture, we've been working with other fact checkers in the Nigeria Fact Checking Coalition, and since 2 days ago, been working from a situation in Lagos and Abuja. Yes, much of what happened on the eve of the election was, claims about candidates stepping down for the other candidates, especially the major candidates. Found literally all of them claims that they had stepped down for other person, and then in addition to that, there were also claims about courts disqualifying candidates. One major one that went viral was a claim that the Supreme Court had disqualified the candidate of the PDP as Alo, and it's vetted quite well, but obviously that is completely false. In fact, the report, the way it went out, it said that the verdict was given by the Supreme Court on that Friday, and with a check, there was nothing like that. There's even no evidence that the Supreme Court sat on any matter on that day. Then there was also a matter of the magistrate court disqualifying the APC candidates. And then we did look into that. Obviously, in fact, this one, there was a document that circulated claiming that that's the judgment of the magistrate court on that matter, and that too was completely false. Obviously, there was an utter around then looking into the issue with the discrepancy in age of candidate, but then there's absolutely no judgment whatsoever on that, sort of disqualifying that candidate. So those obviously had some impact, at least in the information space. We don't know to what extent they may have influenced the voting yesterday.
I was going to ask about that, Allwell, regarding the influence it might have had on the voting. If you were to give a wild guess, if you were to give a wild guess, and also to consider the amount of time that these information spent in the rounds, during the rounds, do you think that in any small way or large way they might have affected the elections?
No, it would have, because obviously people make decisions with this information, and before an election there's always those rumors that certain candidate might up, step down, but that happens quite well with candidates of less known parties, but the major candidates, if that to happen, then it has a very huge impact. So imagine someone who had made up his own mind to vote for a particular major candidate, and then you wake up on that morning or the eve of the election and you hear that this person has been disqualified. And in fact, there was a post that we saw about talking about the PDP candidate and disqualified by the Supreme Court, and the person went on to say that every vote cast for PDP will be will not count. So imagine someone getting that kind of information. A potential impact is that maybe the person say, well, there is no need for me to go out and vote.
Oh.
Allwell Okpi there from FactcheckAfrica. They're just giving us updates on some of the rapid spread of disinformation, misinformation, especially surrounding the Edo State gubernatorial elections. And he joined us earlier just to give us more update on that and sort of clarify some of the key most significant fake news stories that trended during this election. He's back now. Well, Allwell, continue. We lost you for a second.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, but on election day, the pattern was a bit different, right? Which obviously sort of aligns with the patterns of previous elections that we have seen, which is that there were much of what we're seeing had to do with a disruption of voting here, violence. And you see with a lot of photos and videos that circulated claiming that, okay, this evidence of disruption of voting in some polling units somewhere. And obviously, some of them, when we checked, they were correct. However, quite a number of them also were false, and they came from previous elections.
We seem to be having issues with it.
We saw videos from 2019 and 2023 general elections, where you see where ballot boxes were aching and things were ballot that were scattered all over the place, and they were not from this election. And that's sort of a normal pattern that usually happens, and different parties in this, or people who have different interests in this, use those old videos to push those narratives, for to probably push their own agenda around the election. But then also we also saw fake declaration of results, different other up in different places around the election. And of course, some of them, like this one that Mara, which is like a picture of a result sheet from a polling unit in Isako, and which shows that the number of accredited voters was about 200 and something, and then and then the total votes ended up as over 400, and that's obviously quite an issue. And we did check and confirm that is true, and that's something that probably INEC might have to explain how that is possible for a number of votes to be way more than the number of accredited voters in a particular polling unit. So much of what is going on is around results. As we know, INEC hasn't declared any result yet, and of course by law it is INEC that has to do that. And so what's going on is people pushing different narratives of who won where, and of course to understand, we see that the IREV worked quite well this time. I think as of the last, that over 90% of the polling unit result uploaded, and that was also one area where there was a bit of misinformation, because we found also some claims that INEC is not uploading anything on the IREV. But then as of the time that claim was circulating, there were already quite a number of results uploaded there. So different actors are also sort of looking at the IREV and putting together the votes as they are, and then so only different versions of the results are out there, but we're going to have to wait to see what INEC is going to declare at the end of the day.
In your opinion, and just observing the election and just, and then observing and watching and managing the spread of disinformation and misinformation during this off-cycle election, what would be your assessment of INEC?
I think we might have, he's frozen.
Seem to have lost him there. We'll
Yeah,
try
he's
to
frozen.
bring him back on. But as always,
Into the issues.
yeah, we lost you there for a second. Oh, well, we'll continue, please.
Okay, yeah. So what? No, it's really how INEC respond to issues of false information circulating, all that. Well, I experience that there's let's say an improvement in terms of being responsive for some of the issues on ground, because we've had to speak to the INEC officials to confirm certain information, and to a great extent they did to confirm some of those information, and then also they have also on well in terms of communicating on their platform. But then of course that it's always there's always a lot of room for improvement in that, but generally we're not really able to comment on. Obviously that will be done post-election, and obviously more of the observers who are right there in the field are in better position to make give those verdicts.
Well, we can't wait for the results. In fact, that's what we're doing here today, waiting for those to come in so we can also tell factually. However, regarding the information that was circulated before the elections that were not correct, who were they targeted at? What medium was used to disseminate these information? And maybe from there, you could tell what the intent of the people who actually pushed those information out was.
Yeah, so obviously, in elections like this, the target is always the voter. It is sort of to sway the voters' perception of events, of candidates, of parties, influence voter behavior.
I'll stop you there. I'll stop you there for a second and rephrase. Now, we are aware that, of course, it was for the voters. They wanted the voters to get these disinformation so that it will influence their voting. However, were they specific targets and specific medium or media that were used? Was it, for instance, social media? Was it the papers? Was it word of mouth? And from there, what was the intent? To sway youth, for instance, or to sway older or middle-aged people? I'm looking for the specific intention of these misinformation.
All right. So in terms of platform, obviously the biggest platforms are sort of the social media, and much of what we saw, like generally for when you talk about politics, one of the most active platform is X, that's former Twitter. That's where much of the communication around politics governance happen, and so we did see a lot of this information on that platform. But then there were also on Facebook. There were also on WhatsApp, which is obviously one of the platforms that people use a lot to push narrative because of the end-to-end encryption. So it's even a lot more difficult for us as fact checkers to know what is going on those platforms. So generally, much of it happened on social media, but then of course it doesn't just end there. Whatever happens on social media also move into word of mouth. Going into those communities, you might say, okay, social media doesn't have so much impact in rural communities, but that is not quite true, because the people who get this information from social media are able to, spread it through word of mouth in their rural communities, and then of course stuff like WhatsApp, sort of have a wider reach, and a lot of this thing, they jump from one platform to the other. So obviously, sort of the people that it will most influence are probably undecided voters, because people who are already stuck with their parties, whether they are supporting a particular party or the other for some level of affiliations, they might not be so much influenced by some of this false information. Much of the influence will be around undecided voters, and of course the younger demographic, which based on the voter statistics, the youth obviously had the larger percentage of registered voters in this election. So that bracket obviously is where the impact would be the most. And so and then about the intention, yes, it's always to put a particular candidate in a bad light relative to another, so that it's someone who may not necessarily have a candidate in mind, but take that information and say, oh, if this is true about this guy, then I'm not voting for that person, rather than probably choose someone else. But then with all that, the narratives around this election, it went beyond the candidates. There are obvious issues around godfatherism, former governors or incumbent, supporting certain candidates. And so all of those influences, all the narratives around that did play in this election in terms of the type of information that was going round. So it was a whole lot of targeted on personalities in that way. Then obviously it's to swear.
Now, we have with us in the studio Barrister Osaro Abumere, and I need you to listen to this question I'm going to ask him, because I'm going to need your reaction for after. So, Barrister, like you've just heard Allwell tell about the misinformation that was propagated before the election, perhaps maybe during the election, and it makes me wonder whose responsibility, or does INEC have any responsibility at all regarding these kinds of information that are being passed before any election or during the election, and in subsequent elections to come? Should they, and what apparatus could they use? I guess that's Allwell's bit now, but should they have a responsibility in tackling these misinformation?
I don't think so, because that I believe INEC will be going outside the constitutional powers of INEC. INEC has its role clearly defined, its function clearly defined under our laws. They are to conduct election, manage the election process. If when it comes to question of dissemination of false information, some other agencies of government could well be responsible for that. Some of those information could be violation of several other laws, the penal laws, criminal code, the cyber crimes act, and all the rest. So depending on, don't forget, we also have the National Orientation Agency. So they too, they have a role to play. So I don't think INEC has a role really, to play in that regard, save for INEC to restate the work they are doing to the people, to say, this is what we have put out, these are our guidelines, these are our rules, these are our results.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, Allwell, you heard his entry there. If INEC, and that's just if INEC was to say they want to take responsibility in subsequent elections, what apparatus could they use?
Obviously, yeah. I mean, election is multi-stakeholder event or process, but and INEC could still help in at least one way, which is to make sure that, information around issues are, out there proactively. When a matter of misinformation and disinformation, really, it's something that you can really look out for to say, typically during election, this kind of false information, circulate, and then you can proactively ensure that information around that is out there. So for organizations generally, when you are not apt to edit to communicate or provide accurate information on time, then you give that space for false narrative to try. And so INEC is going to do something about information, is to ensure that sort of they up their game in communicating on time about every issue that is more likely going to be controversial, and those things can be predicted, and because similar patterns happen across elections, right? And so, but then with other INEC actually did raise concern about the spread of fake news even before the election, and that some ways they could also collaborate with journalists to ensure that information will always be out there before the people who create the false narrative start pushing. Because once there is that gap in information, then obviously they will fill it with something, because people are hungry to know what's going on, and then there will always be that that way to. So INEC can actually work with these fact checkers to look at how they ensure that every information that could anything that could lead to a space where a narrative can thrive, is blocked before it is spread, and and then of course way to ensure that the fact checkers are really on this matter. So we as the Nigeria Fact Checkers Coalition, we are always open to collaborate with INEC in any way possible to sort of ensure that elections are free of false information. And then of course there could be some things that could be done around the social media platforms, in parts of the world, that's really that look into how social media platforms can also help in flagging some of this false information as they come up. We, of us as fact checkers, also do work with some of the platforms. Actually engage fact checkers to check the things that are posted there. So that could be ways around making that arrangement stronger, so that before these things begin to circulate, the accurate information is already out there. That's usually one of the ways to nip it at the bud before it spreads so far and have quite an impact on the election.
It will be the first time that there's any consideration to facts and how it's disseminated inside of an election period. Maybe INEC is actually thinking about this for the next election. Perhaps they are. Do you think that perhaps maybe they must put together a different body to be able to help with fact-checking information? We see that in other countries, the developed countries, that there are institutions that are in place already to help with this situation. Should Nigeria be looking at that, and how feasible is that? Well, for the coming elections, we have a couple coming in a couple of weeks. So, what's your thought on that?
Well, we actually started this the Young Fact Checking Coalition in June 2022. June 2022, about a year to the election, the general election, and after we did that in the general election, this model was actually adopted in quite a number of countries in Africa, Kenya, South Africa, where fact checkers, journalists come together to put this coalition where people are actually monitoring what is going on around the election. So I think it is something, if there's going to be any audio, I think that this this fact-checking coalition is already a platform for that, and it only needs to be made more robust, probably with more active involvement of INEC as the major organization in elections like this, and then probably other stakeholders, so that some of these things can be looked at in a more proactive way, and the checks and all that will be done in a more comprehensive way to ensure that nothing escapes. Because truly, if we look at it, disinformation is a major factor, considering the fact that election is really about people making decisions, whether to vote or not to vote, and who to vote on election day. So all of that, if it is, what we already have as a fact-checking coalition can be sort of built on. We could have such an organization or a body that can, to a larger extent, be able to solve the problem, or at least reduce it very significantly, the spread of false information around elections.
Speaking of false information around elections, we're waiting for the coalition to get started for today. We were informed it might start by 11 or 12 noon today. Regarding misinformation, are there frequent cases from the last elections where there's misinformation about the results and the coalition and the numbers of votes to a certain party to come out around this time? Have you seen cases like this from the last time?
Yes, obviously. I mean, this period is usually the most tense period around the election, where voting is done, and then collation, and this is where much of the allegations around in interference happen, right? So I think this is really the period where INEC should actually be the most transparent, the most proactive in providing information, because from what we have seen, from what people have been saying for this election, that there's this delay in the collations, and that. So when those kind of things begin to happen, you see there's that room for speculations of what is happening, who is bribing who is adjusting the results and all that. So if it is good for INEC to be more transparent around how this collation goes on, and continue to inform the public around it, it probably will help. That has always been the pattern from every election. Once it gets to the stage of collation, there's usually that that space where nobody's sure what's going on, and then before you get to the announcement of results, and then obviously when in that period people begin to push different results from however they're able to calculate it, and when those narratives go out that a particular party has won, and then the results, when the INEC then announces the result, and you find that the result is different from the narrative that have gone spread quite far on social media, then you find that you have a situation where there is likelihood of protests or people getting angry about the result by INEC, and then of course different stakeholders are going to protest. They know this is not the result as we have it. So really, this is usually about the most tense period I think that INEC can do better to, continuously inform the public about what is going on, and to ensure, assure everyone that, nothing illegal is going on around the collation. Because at the end of the day, by law, it's INEC that's supposed to declare the results of the election, and it will be in the interest of everyone that what is declared aligns with what we have already on the iron.
All right. Well, well, as always, thank you so much for doing this with us, and well done with Africa Check there, with all the solid analysis and just making sure that the people and the populace stay informed. And that's Allwell Okpi. He's the community manager for Africa Check. Once again, thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you.